This is not something to mess around with. It's just an easy way to lose your mind within the confines of your own home, but there are a couple guidelines to follow. First, pick a room with no windows. It can be a room for anything, but it just can't have windows. Second, you can start at any time in the day, even if you wish to start at night, for the process will take exactly 24 hours to complete. Third, cancel all appointments you have for that day. Turn off your phone if you have to, for there can't be any distractions for you to focus on. Fourth, make sure it is a calm and quiet day outside and not windy or storming outside. Lastly, to start the process, you must go into the room you picked. Put a clock inside. The clock must make the distinct tick-tock sound when every second passes. Turn off the lights and light a candle. That candle will be your only source of light. Once you have done all of that, I honestly want you to ask yourself one question. Do I really want to do this? If your answer is yes, then may God have mercy on you. I'm here to merely prepare you on what to expect. All right, let me tell you a little bit of information about the procedure. Back in the mid-1800s, radical members of the Christian, Muslim, and Islamic faith used it as a way to connect with God. It was kept under wraps due to its extreme nature and unusual method to connect with the supernatural. The clock represented life on earth and how short it can be, and the candle represented God as the only way of guidance through life. Most often than not, each person that would go through the procedure would lose their minds, and within a day, and due to their insane actions, would kill themselves on what they claimed to have seen. But if you were one of the lucky ones, you can keep your sanity, like me. Okay, now here is what to expect. The first 3 hours are the least eventful, mainly because nothing really happens. But prepare yourself in these hours. These are the only hours in which you may choose to leave the procedure. In the fourth hour, you will not be able to escape by any means. The lock on your door will lock by itself, and you will have no way to move it. In the fifth hour, you will start to sweat profusely and will start to have feelings of anxiety. You will start to look behind you many times, and every time there will be nothing there. In the sixth hour, you will hear noises. Not noises from the house or from outside, but thuds and thumps throughout the hour in 10-minute intervals, with each noise getting louder. In the seventh hour, you will pass out and dream. But this will be the only pleasant hour throughout the process. You will dream about the best moments in your life, every great accomplishment, wonderful memory, and friend you have made will appear before you. It will have been the best dream you have ever had in your life. Even events from the future can appear. At the beginning of the eighth hour, you shall wake up. But when you do, you will feel an extreme sense of elation and comfort, similar to the effects of smoking marijuana. Now for some this could be considered another pleasant hour, but what comes after will be the start of your suffering. In the ninth hour, you will, in a sense, go from one drug to another. Your feelings of elation will change to that of extreme adrenaline and energy, similar to the effects of any stimulant drug. But a warning, you must try your hardest to keep yourself under control. You're unpredictable. There is no telling what you will do in this state. In the 10th hour, hopefully you have minimal injuries from the last hour, but now you will start to feel normal, and your feelings you previously felt will subside. Now you will hear screaming, but the screaming can vary from what it sounds like, from a little girl to a full-grown man. You will hear screaming at 6-minute intervals throughout the hour. This hour is going to feel like an eternity to pass. At the 11th hour, the light from the candle will go out that, as you are left alone in the darkness, you are free to think to yourself, most likely regretting the decision you have made. At the 12th hour, the light from the candle will reappear, but do not worry. This is another hour of silence, but mentally prepare yourself for what you are about to experience next. In the 13th hour, you shall pass out much like you did in the 7th hour, but dawn. Expect happy memories. In this dream, you shall experience every painful moment, suffering, and unpleasant thing in your life all over again, even suffering in the future, including your own death. This will be the worst dream you will ever have in your life. At the 14th hour, you will wake up. This is another hour of silence, but the silence will be broken by your own sobbing. Your tears shall lines continue until the hour is over. In the 15th hour, this is putting it very bluntly, is when things start to get weird. You will talk to someone. He's not visible, but he is there. He does not have a name, but I'm giving him one. He is your guardian angel, but you can call him watcher or protector. But for me, I call him asshole. This may seem funny, but trust me, it suits him. The first thing he will say to you is, ask me anything, and I shall give you an answer. You can ask him anything about your life, what will happen in the future, and why events occurred when they did. He will give you an answer, but extreme and graphic details, and give reasons for things will not understand, whether it be a tragedy or a death. By the end of the hour, he will say far, you'll and leave. In the 16th hour, you will talk to your parents, but they do not make a physical appearance, mind you. Now it's your turn to answer questions. They will ask you questions about what, why, who have done with your life, and if you do not answer one of their questions, they will press on for an answer until you can't take it anymore. At the end of the hour, they will go away. At the 17th hour, you will talk to the most important guy in your life, whether it be your significant other or your best friend. He will ask you why and how you became friends, but keep in mind he is not looking for friendly conversation. He is questioning your friendship with him, finding every mistake you have done to cripple your friendship with him. Reasoning with him will not work and will act like your parents did in the previous hour. At the 18th hour, you will speak to the most important girl in your life, whether it be your significant other or your best friend. She will the same as the person in the 17th hour did, and ask the same questions. At the 19th hour, you will talk with yourself, meaning you will talk with your future self, and trust me, this is the least pleasant conversation. He will tell you things you will not want to hear about yourself, and will ask you questions you can and can't answer. Soon it will be too much, and you will find yourself screaming at yourself, and anger and self-loathing will be the only emotion you will have. In the 20th hour, following the events of the 19th hour, you will find any possibility to hurt yours. Self-inflicting pain will be constant in this hour. Some have even committed suicide in this hour. In the 21st hour, if you manage to survive the previous hour, here is what will await you. Sick, yes, music. It will be soft orchestral music with a choir singing Gregorian chant. similar to church music, but more beautiful. By the end of this hour, your wounds will heal. Don't ask me why, even I don't know. And the 22nd hour, the music will stop. This is another hour of silence. But you have time to think to yourself. The light on the candle will change colors, all laws of the spectrum. This quite a sight to behold. It's almost soothing. In the 23rd hour, you will sing Gregorian chant. But your singing will be the only sound in the room. You honestly don't know what you're singing, but it sounds beautiful, and you will actually want to sing more. Finally, the 24th hour. This is the most interesting hour. Rumor says you talk to God himself. But here is how it goes. You are pinned to the floor by some unknown force, and someone or something asks you a question. 10-minute intervals. Questions like, are you happy? Or would you like to change? You must answer. You will feel the need to. The questioner sounds like a man, but at the same time sounds like an animal, almost like the roar of a lion. His voice is terrifying but yet comforting at the same time. After the hour is up, you will be able to get up, and the door will unlock. If you're lucky, you still have your sanity. Now it's up to you what you shall do with this information. If you want to do this, I'm not stopping you, but I'm giving you fair warning. Some things are beyond the realms of human comprehension, and sometimes it just have nothing to explain the unnatural, but whatever it is, at least we know we are not alone. Now remember what I have told you. If you want to lose your grasp on reality and destroy your complete sanity, just listen to the clock. Story 2. The patchwork quilt. An elderly woman hummed softly to herself, smiling happily as she worked, the needle glinting as her brittle hands slid it through the material, piecing the scraps together with thread. Agatha Limerick, better known as Miss Aggie, had been working on this particular quilt for the past 46 years. And finally it was nearly finished. A shaky hand reached forward and stroked the material of the quilt lovingly. Such a beautiful quilt. Earthy reds and milky peaches, sun-tanned yellows and golds, browns ranging from coffee beans to milk chocolate. Oh, yes. Such a pretty quilt she'd made. Gentle smile still in place, Aggie reached over for another scrap of material, only to touch the cool wood tabletop. Frowning, she turned to look at the pile of scraps next to her, but it was no longer there. Drat, she huffed. Well, I suppose I had been working for a while now. I must have used it all up. Turning back to her work, she sighed as she stroked the material again. And here I was, so close to my goal, she said sadly, giving the quilt one last gentle touch. Aggie hefted herself out of her chair and hobbled to the stairs. Once reaching the top, she glanced down at the quilt, a look of determination on her face. Tomorrow, she stated, flicking the lights off, lines finish it tomorrow, and she closed the door behind her. The sun shone brightly as Aggie shuffled into the fabric store, immediately heading towards the scrap pile. As she dug around in the fabrics, she glanced around the little shop. 3 other women were browsing around, one with a 5-year-old boy hanging on to the hem of her skirt. Aggie smiled lightly. She knew these women and was quite fond of them. Turning her attention back to the scrap pile, she looked over the colors of the materials, checking their textures and durability. She frowned unhappily. While they were good materials, none were good enough for her quilt. Sighing, she went about collecting the materials she'd like to use for a different project before heading toward the thread and needle area. It was while she debated on what color thread she wanted when the door's bell chimed. Another customer had entered. Glancing over her shoulder, Aggie watched as a young man of about 23 stepped into T.H.'s shop. He was tall, with pale, freckled skin and short, shiny copper hair, almost like that of a new penny. What seemed to be a constant smile stretched across his face as he turned to the young lady at the counter, Grace. Aggie smiled as the two started talking excitedly, Grace seeming to vibrate with happiness. He seems like a nice young man. I wonder what his name is, Aggie, he thought to herself. She hobbled over to the counter, setting her surprisingly heavy purchases down. Hello, Gracie, Aggie hummed. Miss Aggie, Grace exclaimed. Oh, it's so good to see you again. Have you finished that quilt you told me you were working on? Not just yet, dear, Aggie chuckled. She glanced over to the young man curiously, Grace following her gaze. Oh, how rude of me. Aggie, this is my cousin, Anthony. He's here visiting before he heads for Europe tomorrow. Tony, this is Miss Agatha Limerick. His smile widened as he offered Aggie his hand, giving a firm yet gentle shake when she took it. So you're the infamous Miss Aggie, I tell you. Grace can go on about you and your work for hours. I don't think there's anything I don't know about you. Tony laughed, getting a dirty look from his cousin. Aggie chuckled good-naturedly. Well, I assure you, my work isn't quite as good as some make it out to be, she said, handing Grace the money or her items. So you're going to Europe tomorrow? Whatever for? I'm going on an expedition in the Carpathian Mountains. Carpathian Mountains? Aggie asked. The Carpathian Mountains are the eastern wing of the great central mountain system of Europe, curving round about 900 miles along the borders of Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, Ukraine, Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro, and northern Hungary. 52.5% of the Carpathian region is located within Romania, where my team and I will be. Aren't you knowledgeable, Aggie Haste? Reaching for her things, he just likes to toot his own horn. Grace huffed, shooting a look at her still smiling cousin. Trust me, Miss Aggie, he's best ignorant. Aggie, what are you doing? Just grabbing my things, dear. There's no need to shout, but it's too heavy for you to carry all the way home, Grace said worriedly. Come now, Gracie, I may not be a spring chicken, but I'm no old crone either. I can handle a bag of cloth and thread. But Miss Aggie, I can carry it, Anthony interrupted. Really? Grace asked, looking to her cousin. Hopefully, sure, no problem. Do I not get a say in the matter? Aggie huffed. With all due respect, ma'am, Anthony began. If you live as far away from this shop as Grace has told me, I think you could use some help. I can even help out with some other errands if you want. Well, I suppose, but only if you're willing to carry my groceries as well as my purchases here, Aggie stated, just yearning to her bag on the counter. Of course, Anthony grinned. He really is such a nice young man, Aggie thought, smiling as he held the door open for her. Tilda. Aggie hummed a soft tune as she hobbled up to our front door, Anthony behind her. The shopping had gone quickly, if only in comparison to when she did it alone. I'd forgotten how nice it is to have someone come along with me, she thought, ushering Anthony into the kitchen, front door closed and locked behind her. Shuffling in after him, she couldn't help but chuckle as he attempted to figure out what went where. Such a nice young man, she thought again, moving so as to help him. No, dear, the bread goes in the fridge, and the canned goods go in the cupboard. It took about half an hour to put everything away, and even longer to clean up the flour that had been spilt in the process. I am so sorry, Miss Aggie. I hadn't thought it would bust like that, Anthony had cried, obvious worrying in his eyes. Aggie. He had simply smiled and waved him off, saying it was nothing to worry about. It's too bad, though, Aggie thought as she stepped out of the kitchen, to steaming mugs in hand. I was really looking forward to making those pastries tomorrow. Sighing softly, she made her way into the dining room where Anthony was waiting. His brows creased in worrying as he saw her. I really am sorry, he lamented. It's fine, Anthony. Here, I made us some tea. A small thank you for the help. Aggie handed him one of the mugs before sitting across from him. I hope you like it. It's my own special blend. Anthony smiled at her ingratitude before taking a sip. Wow, I don't think I've ever tasted something like this before. What's in it? He asked curiously. Now, Aggie tutted. That is my own little secret, and I shall be taking it to my grave. They both chuckled before falling into a comfortable conversation. They chatted for what seemed like hours about things ranging from Aggie's quilting and other such projects to Anthony's old adventures as well as those to come. It was very calm, and soon enough both mugs were drained. And then in Portugal, Anthony Stew turned to a stop, mouth gaping in a yawn. I'm sorry, Miss Aggie. I guess I'm more tired than I thought, he chuckled lightly. I should probably go now, making so as to stand. Anthony swayed before falling back into his chair. My dear boy, you look exhausted. Why don't you spend the night here? I have a spare bedroom just downstairs. No, I'd hate to. True. Another yawn escaped him. Intrude. Nonsense, Aggie insisted, tugging at his arm. Just rest here tonight, and I'll have Gracie bring your things over in the morning. Well, if you sure, Anthony said hesitantly, eyes drooping as he was dragged along. Of course, said Aggie, opening the basement door and flicking on the light. She couldn't help but chuckle as they made their way down, both lucky not to have fallen. He really is tired, Aggie thought, guiding him into the bedroom. There you are, dear. Aggie had just barely gotten the words out before Anthony collapsed on the bed, snoring without a care in the world. Aggie smiled kindly. You really are such a nice young man, Aggie said to the sleeping figure. It's too bad what I have to do, but I swore to finish that quilt today, and you have the perfect material. The sleeping man never saw the gleam of the knife as she pressed it to his throat. An elderly woman hummed softly to herself, smiling happily as she worked, the needle glinting as her brittle hands slid it through the human leather, piecing the scraps together with thread. Agatha Limerick, better known as Miss Aggie, had been working on this particular quilt for the past 46 years, and finally, after so much killing, it was finished. A shaky hand reached forward and stroked the material of the quilt lovingly. Such a beautiful quilt, earthy reds from a young Native American man and milky peaches from a porcelain doll like young lady. Sun-tanned yellows and golds from visiting Californians, browns ranging from coffee beans to milk chocolate from that lovely couple visiting from New Hampshire. And now the pale freckled pieces from her dear friend Anthony. Oh yes, such a pretty quilt she'd made, such pretty memories of the people it was made of. Gentle smile still in place, Aggie clipped the last thread and looked down at her masterpiece. Her patchwork quilt, story 3. One-word story. Have you ever played one-word story? It's a very simple game. A few people take turns going around to make a sentence. Each person adds one word until the sentence is complete. Then someone says, period, and it's read back. It's actually pretty fun if you play with the right people. But I'm pretty antisocial and only have 1 or 2 friends. They don't like the game as much as I do. So I use a random chat site to play with strangers. It's completely anonymous, so my identity supposed to be safe. Anyway, it was late afternoon on a Saturday, and I was in the middle of a game when my apartment went dark. It was probably caused by the weird heat all week. Other tenants in my building had complained about the power cutting short around this. It only lasted a few minutes, but when the power came back on, I saw I had been disconnected from the site. When I tried to re-enter, I couldn't. It kept crashing or something, and I kept getting disconnected. I'm acidly bored, and was a little more than pissed that I hadn't finished my game. So I took to Google and searched chat room, anonymous, one-word story. After 0.18 to 3 seconds, I had 23,000 results. I scrolled down the page and tried a few sites out, but either the players weren't very good or I was led to an anonymous sex chat site. It wasn't until the 3rd page of results that I found something interesting. Microfiction.com. I clicked the heading and entered the site. Then I logged in as a guest. I was really surprised to see how dedicated the site was to an Overa. Lines, simple game, mystery, parody, anime, music, cartoons, horror, film, superstition, and superhero were just a few of the categories that people could use to play one-word story for no particular reason. I went to mystery first and played a few short games, then I went to horror, then to music, and to a few others. Eventually, I went to take a bathroom break and made sure to bookmark the site so I could visit it in the future. The site was pretty well managed. Under each main heading, for example, horror, there were subheadings. These were games being hosted by members. Some games only had a few people in them. Others had 30 or 40. Some were open to anyone. Others were private games that you could only get into if you had a password that the host had sent you. I played for a few hours, really enjoying myself because everyone here took the game just seriously enough to make each sentence interesting, and also had enough fun to make the whole story funny to read out loud while still making sense. It was 10 now, and 10:30 was my self-imposed bedtime. So I resigned to play one more game before going to sleep. Going to mystery for the last time that night, I found a private game. Being a guest on the site, I couldn't message the person to ask to join, and I would have kept looking for a public game, except that the page froze. I refreshed it and saw that the game had been changed to public with room for one person. I thought about that, a one-on-one game of one-word story, and I felt excited at the possibility that this guy would be just as good as I was, and we could create something really unique. So I joined. The host, username Doppelganger1221, went first. I appeared on the screen almost instantly. I was impressed with this guy's bravery, as using I in this game usually led to embarrassing sentences in the long run. So I rewarded him with a simple enough word that would keep the sentence going. See, he responded almost immediately with you. This was honestly a very amateur tactic. It would make the game harder to finish, and the unsettling approach was never enough to make me quit. I decided to humor him, though, and type through his response. I thought about where the sentence was going, and noticed that my living room window was still open from the afternoon. I typed window. His response was a period, signaling the end of the sentence. I see you through your window, I chuckle, Ed, to myself, realizing this guy was a creep, a player who tries to make unsettling or disturbing sentences to scare his opponents into leaving the game. He probably had a friend with him, and they were thinking up ways to scare me. I didn't blame them. My sister and I did that last Halloween when I babysat for my parents. I started the next sentence. You, his reply, are my reply, not his reply. Safe, my reply was a period, ending the sentence. You are not safe again. I chuckled and watched as he started the next sentence. I appeared on the screen. I typed AM, which was followed by coming. I thought about ending the sentence there as a slight punishment against the guy for not taking the game seriously. Instead, I typed to see if he would type what I thought he would. He typed you. I was right on the money, and typed a period. I am coming for you. It wasn't funny anymore, just boring. There was a chat, so I used it to tell the guy to cut the creep stuff. I told him it wasn't funny, and if he didn't cut it out, I would leave the game. He actually replied, "Look out your window." That caught me off guard, but I did what I was told. Across the street, a light post had burned out its bulb, which I hadn't noticed before. It was pretty dark, and I couldn't really make out any shapes. I turned back to the monitor. Doppelganger had typed I, and I saw in the chat that he had posted another comment. Basically, he was telling me what to write. I was becoming fed up with him, but 10:30 was just 5 minutes away. I reasoned to just finish, and did as he asked. I typed have, he typed a. I typed gun, he typed two. I typed your, he typed head. I finished the sentence with a period. I have a gun to your head, I sighed aloud, and closed my eyes, stretching at my desk. I just wanted this game to be over. It was my turn, and he had sent me another list of words, so I typed I. He typed AM, I typed at. He typed your, I typed window. He typed a period. I am at your window. Reading it aloud, I realized the game was over. We had made the story relate to our first sentence. Out of habit, I read every sentence out loud. I see you through your window. You are not safe. I am coming for you. I have a gun to your head. I am at your window. I finish. Ed reading, and rested my head against my chair, yawning. I was drowsy and thought about sleeping in my chair when a loud, cracking sound echoed across the empty street outside, and I noticed the crack. That was spider webbing from the center of my computer monitor. I blinked to full alertness and saw it, the glint of a bullet, sticking out of my screen. I turned my head behind me and screamed as I saw someone in a mask staring in through my window. Out of panic, I dashed out of my chair and into my bedroom. I hid in the closet, under a thick pile of dirty laundry, and waited, trying to control my rapid breathing as my eyes adjusted to the uncomfortable darkness. It was a few minutes before I heard soft footsteps. The maniac was in my bedroom. I could see his dark boots and leather pants. He fired the gun again at my bed sheets. He must have thought I was hiding in the covers. He rummaged through my drawers and took something that I thought was money or my prescription medicine. I saw him stalk towards my bathroom and fire a shot into the shower. He looked around in there before turning around and looking under my bed. He was almost level with the floor, so I could see his features. He was at least 6 feet and dressed in all black, except for his mask, which was white with red tear tracks under the eyes and a painted set of crooked, beast-like teeth. He seemed to see perfectly in the dark. I could really only see him because his clothes seemed to be darker than the already lightless interior of my bedroom after what felt like hours. He stood up and walked out of my room. I stayed in my closet all night, eventually falling asleep, covered in my unclean socks and underwear. I smelled horrible in the morning, and the first thing I did was take a shower. As I did, I stepped on the bullet that had torn a hole in my shower curtains. Afterwards, I called the police, who told me to come down to the station, and I got ready to go, but couldn't find my keys anywhere. While looking through the drawers of my desk, I complained internally about my monitor being busted. I could still see the site, the chat room, and the game, and took a picture of it with my phone. For the police, in the kitchen looking for my keys. It hit me that I had kept them in my dresser drawer, and ran into my room to see that what the psycho had taken was my keys. I groaned, and was about to call my buddy for a ride when I accidentally opened my photo gallery. I was very annoyed with myself until I took another look at the picture I had taken. Something was different in the picture than I had remembered from last night. There was a new line in the chat, a single word, a simple question, a word I had used so in white times over the words after a game was over. I never thought that this word would send shivers down more spine nor turn my blood to ice in my veins. Rematch story for the system. I woke up to the all too familiar beeping of my alarm clock on my night table. I made the mistake of staying up till 4 a.m. the night before, so the only thing in the world that I wanted was to just stay in bed and sleep. But it was a school day. The weekend was over, and it was time to start getting up early again. I reached over and groped for the button that would silence this annoying Washington cap call. I pressed it and took a few seconds to enjoy the silence. I tossed the blankets aside and dragged myself out of bed and over to my window. I threw open the curtains and was blinded by the sunlight that flooded my room. I would have turned to walk to the bathroom, but I was far too busy staring outside. I couldn't believe what my eyes were staring at. Actually, it wasn't really what I was staring at that caught my attention, but rather the lack of it. The parking lot behind my house was empty. No cars, nothing. It's usually packed. It's been packed every day for as long as I can remember. Maybe they already left. Maybe I just woke up late. I looked at my alarm clock. Nope, 7:30, same time I always wake up. Oh well, they probably just left early, shrugged it off as just that, and went to take a shower. The warm water felt so nice and always helped to wake me up. It was my favorite part of the morning. Without my morning shower, my day just wouldn't be complete. I dried myself off and got dressed. I picked out a pretty casual outfit. I'm not one for being the center of attention. Blue jeans, white shirt, black jacket. You can't get much more casual than that. I glanced out my window and my heart skipped a beat. Every car that was usually there was now there, and their drivers were preparing to leave. All I could do was stare in disbelief. I know for a fact that parking lot was void of anything just a few minutes ago. Maybe they all pulled in while I was in the shower. Yeah, that's what happened. Cars don't appear out of thin air. My thoughts were shattered. However, when I heard the familiar Hunter time for breakfast, I came downstairs and saw my mom standing there with a huge smile on her face. She always made my morning happy with her bright personality, life, and not let it change you. With a big smile I said, "Good morning, Mom." "Bacon and eggs?" she asked. They had bacon and eggs every day for who knows how long. I don't think I could stand to look at them anymore. "I think I'll switch it up today," I reply. "How about I just have cereal?" I smiled and looked out the window at the men and women leaving for work. I looked for a while. Then my heart stopped when I turned back to see my mother staring directly at me with an absolutely dead serious look on her face, almost angry. "Mom," I said, feeling a little creeped out. She kept looking at me for the next 10 seconds, and then her look instantly turned into a bright smile. "Okay," she said. "See, real it is then." She got me milk and the box of cereal, and I poured myself a bowl. What the hell was that? Was all I could think for the next 2 minutes. While I ate, when I was finished, I slowly got up and turned to leave. I said, "Thanks, Mom," and proceeded to walk out the door. I was almost out when I heard, "Aren't you forgetting something?" in the most disturbing tone I've ever heard from my mother. She might as well have growled it at me. I turned around to see her holding my backpack up. I took it and said, "Oh, thanks," and left. She shouted out after me, "Have a great day, honey," in her usual happy-go-lucky tone. I smiled and started my walk to school. I decided to take a different route to school today. I've never taken this one before. Might as well try it out. I'm in no rush anyway. My walk was particularly weird. You know that strange feeling you get sometimes, like someone's watching you? Well, that's what I felt on my entire walk to school, because that was actually the case. I mean, it's hard not to feel this way when every person you pass stops and gives you a dead serious stare until you get a considerable distance away from them. I walked faster. Was this some sort of joke? Why me? Why was I the victim of this grand prank? I arrived at my bustling school and decided to talk with my friends for a bit before going to see LASS. I was disappointed when I didn't see my best friend, Owen, there. Oh well, he was probably sick. "Hey, Hunter," one of my friends said, "I didn't see you on the walk to school today. Where were you?" I usually walk with my friends to school, and since I picked a different route today, they must have been wondering what happened. "Oh yeah, I decided to take another route today. Sorry we couldn't walk together. As soon as I said this, the entire area went silent. I turned around and my heart skipped a beat once again when I saw the hundreds of people around me were staring directly at me with that same creepy, serious look. Not a sound was heard. I looked back at my friends. They were silent, too, just staring. Then the noise resumed, and everyone went back to what they were doing. I looked at my friends and laughed. It was a nervous laugh, but I tried to make it sound like this was funny. Well, I have to go to class now. I'll see you guys later, I said as I turned and briskly walked towards my classroom. Seriously, what the hell is going on? I thought as I entered my classroom. Most of my classmates had already arrived, and I took a seat at the back of the room. I usually sit near the front, but I guess I just felt like sitting at the back for a change. I quietly took out my books and set them on my desk. The last of the students finally filed into the room, and the latecomers shortly after that. Once everyone was inside and seated, our teacher, Ms. Randall, closed the door. She started writing notes on the board for us to take down, so I took out a paper and started busily writing. The room was filled with the sound of pencil against paper. I was only halfway finished when the class went silent. Is everyone done already? I thought to myself as I kept writing. The teacher wasn't talking. I didn't want her to wait for me. As I said before, I'm not one to draw attention to myself. I finally finished and looked up to see everyone, including the Ms. Randall, turned around and staring at me with that look. They were all dead silent. I remained still in my seat as I tried to avoid eye contact with the NY of them. After about 20 very painful seconds, they turned back to face the front, and Ms. Randall continued her lecture as if nothing happened. This wasn't a joke. It couldn't be. If it was, it sure wasn't funny. I got up out of my chair and went to leave the room. I heard Ms. Randall say, "Where are you going, Hunter?" Her tone made me speed up my pace. It was the same angry tone that my mother had used this morning. Everyone in the halls stared at me as I passed. I broke into a run, then a sprint. I had to get out of here. I had to go to somewhere safe, to someone I trusted. Owen. He's my best friend and always has been. I trust him with my life. I ran down the many streets, ignoring the stare that everyone I passed was giving me. I arrived at his house and knocked on the door. His mother answered and asked, "Hi, Hunter, why aren't you in school?" I ignored her question and asked, "Is Owen here?" I didn't see him at desk. Who? I presumed he was sick. Owen is sleeping right now. He's very tired. He needs his rest. She replied. The way she said it was unnatural, like she was lying. "I need to see him," I said as I went to go upstairs. I stopped when I heard, "Don't do that." "Why aren't you in school today?" She said this with a disturbingly sinister tone. "I had to leave to come see Owen," I said as I ran upstairs. I got to his door and tried to open it, only to find that it was locked. I knocked on the door and whipped around to see his mother standing at the end of the hallway, staring at me. With a needle in her hand, she started to approach me. I frantically banged on the door and shouted, "Owen! Owen!" No reply. "You strayed from the system," I heard from behind me. "Never ever stray from the system." I felt a sharp pain in my neck as something sunk into it. I collapsed to the ground, extremely dizzy. My vision started fading, and I slowly slipped out of consciousness. I wake up to the ultra-familiar beeping of my alarm clock on my night table. I feel well rested and ready to go to school. Man, I could go for some bacon and eggs right now. Today is going to be a GR. Eat day, I just know it. Story 5, Beast. Look, Tony, just get out of town. Let things settle down. I've got connections in Iliad. They'll rent you a place to lie low, a phonograph, play jazz music, adding a modern ambience to the otherwise rustic lobby. Tony shook his head and leaned over the hotel counter, slipping a 20 over to the clerk, then wiped the sweat from his forehead. I ain't got no choice at the moment, Jim. Just do me this one favor. Sign me in under some made-up name for a week. That should give me the couple of days I need to get everything in order and pay Big all the large ones I owe him. Just this once. Jim scanned the nearly vacant lobby, suspiciously eyeing an intoxicated young couple that loudly staggered through the door. He couldn't get a good look at the male's face before the two embraced in a long and drawn-out kiss. I'll give you the room, ain't no one want to stay in, they say it smells. And some people just walk out in the middle of the night when ain't no one around. Perfect. Tony retrieved his small, soft tan leather suitcase. I won't forget this. Better not. Jim tossed him a key before writing a name down on a ledger, trying to keep his gaze off the curvy dame melting into the embrace of her lover. Tony took the stairs. His heart pounded with the fear that somewhere out there Big All's boys were ransacking his apartment trying to find their quarry. The old Cirque du Luxe Hotel was far enough on the outskirts of Chicago to hide him for a little bit. By the time he reached floor 6, his heart calmed to a normal pace. Taking a deep breath, Tony stepped through the door on the stairwell and entered a hallway bearing a brown carpet with jagged, diamond-shaped patterns. Amidst even darker stains of old booze and muddy shoes, his muscles froze at the ding of an elevator followed by laughing. He relaxed again ever so slightly at the sight of the young couple from downstairs stepping off. The woman glanced at him from under her blonde curls and cloche hat before following her lover to the opposite end of the hall. Tony paid them no more attention and stopped in front of his door, room 616. A tingling filtered down Tony's spine as he entered the room and flicked on a light switch. Paranoia took hold, so he quickly shut the door and bolted it from the inside. Here was home, at least for a couple of days. It smelled of cigar smoke and some other sweet odor that he could not quite place. Water stains drew circles of dark brown on the ceiling and the wallpaper bubbled and rippled in certain places. It wasn't the Ritz, but it was safety. Tony set his suitcase down on the edge of the bed and undid the buttons of his collar and cuffs, hoping to relieve himself of the humidity that permeated the atmosphere. Soaked in nervous perspiration, Tony pulled on the brass cord under a ceiling fan with gilded edges to get some air. As he blades spun to life, a low gurgling sound filled the air, making the bubbles in the wallpaper vaguely shudder. Creak, swish. Tony almost fell over at the sound of the sink's faucet creaking and the shower curtain flying open. Hello? Tony hesitated on his way to the open bathroom door. Who's there? When no one replied, he reached a hand around a corner and flipped on a buzzing white light. Still no one. Nothing there. Not a thing out of place. Knock. Knock. Tony flinched at the sound To be so shaken out by a simple knock was stupid. He knew that. But, too often, he heard the stories of some poor sucker being hunted down by big All's goons even in the remotest of places. Sensing danger, he looked through the peephole first, only to find the young couple. From earlier, the man's face was hidden by his fedora, but the woman looked up at the hole and blew a kiss. "Hey, buddy, we saw you enter," the man called through, "my lady free, and I were looking for an ice bucket. Think you can do us a solid?" "Sure." Tony grimaced and undid the bolt. "Just don't." He opened the door no more than a crack when the man with the fedora kicked it in, knocking Tony off his feet before he could stagger back up. The blonde put the barrel of a pistol to his forehead. "Hang right there, sweetie. All sends his regards, ma." The counterpart took a set of handcuffs from his pocket and dragged Tony over to the bed's headboard, locking his right wrist to it. In the faded light overhead, Tony spotted a jagged scar extending from the man's left lip up to the corner of his eye. "You're the shark." Tony stumbled over his words as his heart quickened to a feverish pace again. "All's muscle, right. Hey, I got the money, just out of time and out of excuses. Good God, you had to find the one room that feels like the tropics." The blonde patted him on the head on her way to the bathroom. "Char, K, baby, how's my makeup?" Shark's reply was interrupted by a ruffling in the closet, followed by the same gurgling as before. "You meeting someone?" The thug narrowed his eyes, the jagged scar wrinkling eye, and just slightly. Tony shook his head, fearing to say anything further. Sticking the key to the cuffs in his pocket, Shark drew a pistol and advanced to the two paneled closet doors. "He got company?" Shark's accomplice asked as she dabbed at her face in the mirror. Shark paid her no attention and leveled the pistol at the center of the closet, then thrust the doors open, almost tearing it from its track on the ceiling. Nothing. Not a thing but wire hangers on a cheap white beam. Shark turned his back and shrugged. "Lousy damn hotel. Walls are so thin that a low rumble see." From behind him, stopping him in his place to watch the bubbles in the wallpaper ripple again. Quicker than Tony's eyes could see, something latched onto Shark's jacket collar. For a brief moment, he could have sworn it was a bent piece of a wire hanger. The second Shark felt the presence behind him, he tried swiveling around, but some force knocked him off balance, and he fell to the floor. "Cindy." NG, the gun tumbling across the floor. He gave a startled shout, and more wire hangers wrapped around his ankles. "Holy shit." Tony skid as far away from the scene as he could and cowered where the bed frame met the wall. "Teresa." Shark shouted as 1 second he felt his body drag across the floor toward the closet, and the next the doors slammed shut along their TR. Act. Gun drawn. Teresa tripped out of the bathroom. "Where is he? What did you do with him, you bastard?" I didn't," was all Tony could stammer, and instead pointed to the closet doors. She followed his gesture and slowly advanced in the direction of her partner, eyes straight ahead with both hands wrapped around the pistol. A movement came from above, cornering Tony's attention. With growing horror, he watched as the brass cord under the ceiling fan stretched downward on its own. Shut up," she scolded, and paused just long enough for the cord to reach her neckline without giving her a chance to resist. The brass chain whipped around her jugular and tightened. Teresa's eyes bulged as she dropped the weapon and grabbed at the chain. Tony watched helplessly as the ceiling fan spun around with increasing speed, its gilded edges making the fixture appear more like a plane's propeller. The chain pulled its query upward as Teresa's hands stretched out uselessly. An even deeper fear took hold. The closer her face came to the rotating blades, she managed to utter a gurgled, desperate scream a mere second before the spinning blades hit skin. Tony shielded his eyes and listened to the squishing whiz of the fan as it impossibly sliced through hair, flesh, and muscle. Flecks of liquid sprayed against the right side of his face, followed by the warm sensation of piss running down his pant leg. A few seconds later was over, and the cord just as inexplicably loosened and dropped the faceless body to the floor. Go. Oh God, for fuck's sake. What the hell is going on? Tony cautiously opened his eyes and crawled toward her dropped gun, but found it just out of reach. This isn't real. It can't be real. It can't be. He paused after feeling a slight burning sensation around the wrist bound by the cuff. Liquid dripped down his elbow, causing Tony to look back around. He opened and closed his mouth in silent screams, but his throat muscles locked tight in. The throes of fright, skin from his hand melted away, exposing muscle and bone. Around him, Teresa's blood soaked into the floor and ceiling, then disappeared. The sweet odor grew more pronounced as Tony watched first the flesh of Teresa's body melt into the carpet, followed by her muscle, hair, and bones. All the while, the bubbles under the wallpaper moved up vertically as others were created, alongside an increasingly loud gurgling and lurching sound. Each time a bubble reached the ceiling, the air in the pocket escaped, sending out more of the permeating acrid sour stench. Tony tried desperately to stand, but the tingling and burning feeling had made it to his legs, which sloshed with the same fleshy melt of his wrist. Gripped in the throes of fear, his neck muscles clenched so tight that he was unable to scream as bit by bit Tony felt his body melt away in a slow digestion within the belly of the beast. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Housekeeping, a voice said after a knock on the door. The maid waited a moment, then unlocked the door and stepped through. Curiously, the guests were missing, but 3 sets of clothes lay folded neatly on the floor beside 2 guns, and a pair of handcuffs still clung to the bed frame. Story 6. The Rattling Coin. The commuter, dressed in a business suit and carrying a briefcase, commutes to the office each morning on the tube. He enters Baker Street Station at around 7 a.m. every weekday and catches the southbound train towards Canary Wharf on the Jubilee line. The station is generally not very busy at this time in the morning. Part of the reason the commuter leaves so early, as he hates the hustle and bustle of rush hour. Plus it gives him time to grab a coffee and a paper and catch up on some emails before work. Another key factor is the beggars. They don't tend to surface from the tunnels until it starts getting busier. Richer pickings, you see. Anyway, one Tuesday morning, the commuter is taking his usual route through the corridors of the station when he notices a beggar sitting on the floor about halfway along the empty corridor with a guitar at his side, rattling a baked beans can with a single coin in it. "Spare change, boss?" asks the beggar as the commuter approaches. "Sorry, pal," replies the commuter, walking on by without even glancing at the beggar. It's a line he's muttered on countless occasions over the years, He's not in the business of putting his hand in his pocket. Plus, he's streamlined his routine down to a fine art and hates any kind of interruption. In any event, the commuter no longer carries spare change with him, as everything's automated these days. Cash long since gave way to chippa, ND pen, which itself has evolved into the even more convenient contactless payment. Much more efficient and far less hassle, more time for emails. The commuter goes about his daily business without a second thought for the beggar the next day. Business as usual, but again he sees the beggar rattling that single coin in that beans can. "Spare change, boss," mutters the beggar. This time the commuter glances at him and notices that he's young, maybe early 20s. He looks him in the eye and says, "Sorry, pal," but this time with a faintly sarcastic tone, as if to say, "Why, we've been through this before." The commuter affords himself a smugly satisfied smirk as he again walks on by. It's Thursday now, and as the commuter follows his familiar route through the corridors to his platform, in the distance he hears the sound of that single coin rattling around and that can echoing along the empty corridors. "He's there again," he mutters to himself, slowing his pace a little before putting his head down and soldiering on, headlong into his third confrontation with the beggar in as many days. This time the commuter will be prepared, as he has time to think of a short speech to come back with when he hears the predictable line. Sure enough, the commuter rounds the corner to see the beggar sitting there rattling that coin, the same coin, in that bloody can again. "Spare change, boss," comes the contrived plea, before the commuter unleashes his annoyance upon the beggar with his well-memorized retort. "Look, pal, I'm not our boss, and if I was, I'd have sacked you by now, you lazy, entitled millennial. Why don't you get off your arse, get a job, and stop hassling those of us who can be bothered making something of their lives? I say again, sorry, pal." And without waiting for a reply, the commuter simply turns and walks away to continue his journey as normal. As the day goes on, the commuter keeps casting his mind back to that interaction with the beggar in the tube station, and it's annoying him, distracting him from his daily business. On the way home, he passes the spot where the beggar had been sat for the past 3 days, and wonders why he doesn't encounter him on his return journey. Now it's Friday, and funnily enough it's the 13th. The commuter isn't superstitious, but he does acknowledge Friday the 13th as a date that holds some significance and a bit of notoriety. He picks up his usual coffee and paper and enters the station. But this time he feels a pang of dread with the memory of today's encounter still fresh in his memory. After what he said to him, how would the beggar react today? Would he attack him? Would he kill him? These irrational thoughts invade the commuter's mind as he begins his journey into the labyrinth of tunnels to his platform. Then he hears the rattle faintly echoing along the corridors. That coin rattling around, and that can again, almost like a beacon, luring him into another confrontation with the beggar. No, not today, not Friday the 13th. He utters and glances around before deciding to go a different route to his platform today. Anything to avoid a repeat of yesterday. Or, perhaps worse, Baker Street Station is known for being the station with the most platforms on the London Underground. It's almost like a hub where you can get too many different lines, but there's a price. It's basically the spaghetti junction of stations with corridors, intersections, and escalators with any number of configurations to get to a given platform. But today, Friday the 13th, the commuter can use this to his advantage to take evasive action and strategically avoid any potential entanglements with his nenes. Is the beggar the sound of the rattling corn fades away, the commuter knows that today he'll be a little later to the office due to this unplanned detour. But he is focused and knows the layout of this station well. He'll get there eventually as he nears the end of a corridor deep in the Baker Street rabbit warren. He becomes aware of that familiar rattling sound. He slowly approaches T end of the tunnel and sees the beggar sitting there with that can. He shouldn't be there, he says to himself, his back pressed against the tunnel just out of sight of the beggar. Luckily, this is an intersection, and he has another alternative corridor to nip into and not have to see him for a fourth day on the trot. So off he tiptoes and ups his pace along his new route. This is gonna be a long way round now. He's gonna have to go down the escalator to the lower platform and back up to the other side. He's panting now, conscious of the time and wary that he's carrying a hot coffee and a paper in one hand and his briefcase in the other. Once he's on the escalator down to the other platform, he starts walking quickly down it, along the platform and on to the upward escalator to the other side. He grabs a second to catch his breath and glance at his watch. And of course the lid comes popping off the coffee cup, sending hot liquid right down his trousers. For fuck's sake, he exclaims, chucking the half-empty cup, sending it sliding down the middle of the escalators. He's really pressed for time now, and as he nears the top of the escalator, unbelievably enough, he hears that bloody coin again. Right? That's it, he says to himself as he slowly approaches the top of the escalator. Peering of the top step, he claps eyes on the beggar at the far end of the middle corridor, rattling away, seemingly waiting for him. The left one will take him back where he came from, so he decides to take the right corridor and swing round towards the Jubilee Line platform where he needs to be. Again, the rattling fades away, and the commuter breathes a sigh of relief. He rounds the corner to the left and almost walks right into the beggar, spare change boss, and the deafening rattle of the coin in that can. All of this happens in the same second, causing the commuter to almost jump out of his skin and immediately panic, dropping everything before, shrieking and sprinting off down the corridor in terror. As he's running, he starts to realize how ridiculous he's being and slows to a trot. Then it dawns on him that he's left his briefcase back there when he nearly shat himself. I'm gonna have to go back, he says inwardly, and stops in his tracks. But I can't go back there empty-handed. He pats his pockets, but realizes this is futile, as he doesn't carry change. So he decides to go back and get his stuff and face the beggar. He'll even apologize if necessary. He knows by this point that he's going to be late for work, but he needs his briefcase. Otherwise, he'll not even be able to swipe himself through the security doors. The commuter begins to retrace his steps and enters the corridor where he encountered the beggar. He peers round the corner and does not see him. More noticeably, as he walks slowly along the corridor, he realizes that he doesn't hear that bloody coin And more importantly, he sees his briefcase lying on the floor right at the end of the corridor where he dropped it. As he approaches, he half expects to come face to face with the beggar again, but no, relieved. He reaches his briefcase and bends down to pick it up, along with his paper. Then his look turns to terror as he notices the headline with a V. E-R-Y familiar face on the picture. Missing musician found. Dead-end tube station. Trembling, he reads further. The body of missing young musician Harry Garfield was found in Baker Street tube station yesterday after an apparent suicide. Aspiring singer-songwriter and former London busker Garfield was last seen last weekend when he was ridiculed by a member of the judging panel at a live TVT talent show. The time of death was put at some time Monday evening. The lights in the corridor flicker briefly and go out with a pop, leaving the commuter standing in complete darkness. Then, ours the rattle of that coin. Story 7, The Courier. We laughed and laughed about it for weeks. The whole idea of it was just blasphemy. It was like a bad horror movie escaped out of a $2 bin at Lucky's gas station and made its way to reality. They called him the Carrier, and as soon as the Jacob Monroe video hit YouTube, the gossip spread like wildfire. The security video of a little boy's abduction was far from normal. A black-winged, human-like creature bombing to the ground at such a velocity made the ground beneath his feet crack. In one swift move, the being used one tallow, unlike hand, to get a firm grip on the boy's head, and used the other to slice his neck like a stick of butter. There was a long screech, enough to cut the video out for a second, but when it got back, gone, leaving only the boy's scream to be lost in the sky and a thin, spindly trail of blood falling straight down. The beast soared to the sky, claiming the first victim visible to be visible to the public eye. Carry Me Home was the account that uploaded the Monroe abduction. It was the only video he posted, and soon after it hit headlines, the video was taken down. Soon after that, the echo had got removed. I never thought much of it. I tended to stay away from all the bullshit myths people talk about. This one was different, though. This one took me off guard, mainly because it looked too real. The kid, his screams, it seemed real. Then again, technology was magical. Anything could be faked. I mean, come on, this kind of shit is just a stupid story, right? That was my exact thought before the day of October 17th, 2008, 2 months after the Monroe abduction had run its popularity course, and everyone kind of forgot about it. A few mentions every now and again, but nowhere near as much as before. Anyway, as I was leaving for school, I noticed a box on my front porch, a gift box, a nice, neat box wrapped in metallic purple paper with yellow boning, no address, no note, just a gift box. I was already late and didn't think much of it. So I left it sitting there and went on my way. I came home to a fairly bizarre HT. I was taking my usual route through the Brandermill path when I heard a scream, a familiar scream. I arrived into my neighborhood and glanced up at my house. I had to do a double take, but I saw my mother outside vomiting profusely. I started to run, worried about what was happening. I asked her what was wrong, but she couldn't talk. She was barely clenching on the gasps of air. All she did was point to the box. Hesitating, I walked up to the already opened box to see a truly grisly sight. I stepped back in horror as I made out what the hell it was. After a second, I instantly knew, and I was more horrified at the realization. It was my neighbors' two cats. They were dead. It wasn't that specifically that mortified me. It was that the cats had both its head removed and grotesquely stitched to the other cat's neck, vice versa with heads. It took a minute to put into perspective what had exactly happened. At the time, I thought it was just a twisted idea of a prank, but I understand now. More on that later, though. The vision of the sick sight burned into my skull, and after that my life became a constant battle. I was always frightened. I went on with the war in my head for a long period of time. I don't really know how long to be exact. I started to get better. I thought I knew I was, but then my first encounter happened, and I will never forget that night. I had just gotten done with my baseball practice. I just remember being happy, walking home, without fear. I then heard a loud scream, a child. He was wailing, blubbering like a baby. I was running to see what was happening when I saw him. Looked no older than 9. He was tied tight to a large tree trunk and crying heavily. But it was strange. He looked straight up, nowhere else. Just up, waiting, crying. Out of the blue I heard a loud snap. Loud enough to make me cringe, like a bone being snapped in two. I winced, then looked back at the boy. He broke his upward stare too. Look at what had just appeared, a waving body flowing with the wind. She was a woman, tied by her hands and strung up by a tree branch. I heard vague muffles, but the boy had nothing binding his mouth, and there was no one else there. The woman was alive, desperately writhing to get free. At this point, the boy started to wail again when he was interrupted by what sounded like a thunderbolt striking a foot away. It was so loud it blew me off my feet. I looked up and saw what I hadn't seen in years, the carrier standing, straight up, looking at the boy, mocking his fear. He turned towards the woman, whose muffled cries were easily made out at this point. I should have ran, but I was paralyzed. I never OD up when I fell, just watched as the creature, with one movement of his abnormal hand, snapped the woman's neck like a toothpick. He cut her binds with one movement of his hand, then dropped her. The boy screamed. I knew instantly who she was. It was his mother, who had just lost her life to this sick being. The carrier was grinning ear to ear. Content with his kill, he started to walk back to the bow when he stopped, dead in his tracks. He turned his head towards me and stared into me with his hollow, non-existent eyes. He wasn't smiling anymore, but a subtle laugh belted out of his sharp teeth. I still couldn't move. He slowly turned back to the boy. That's when I ran. I was about 10 feet away, and I heard the shriek of victory by the beast, who with one jump entered the sky with his fresh kill. I looked back and noticed he didn't take the body of the mother, only the kid. I was too frightened to care as I turned around and ran. It's been a year and a half since I witnessed the murder of the boy and his son. I took a break from this to try and cope, but it's only been getting worse. I keep seeing him just peering at me through my window. I keep getting packages on my front porch. There's been 7 ever since the first one. I haven't opened one and never will. I know what he's trying to do. From all the data I've calculated, every victim of mysterious disappearance in the Virginia area who were seen before their disappearance had experienced some sort of traumatic event, something to induce them with fear. That's the only way he can strike. The two dead cats, I think he was planning something. Don't know how his plan failed. The boy in the woods, the carrier killed his mother before him, to pump him with fear before killing him. I have no idea if this is correct, but I refuse to leave my house. I see him once a day, every day, sometimes more than once, but he only looks, waiting for me to fear. I know better than to fear him, but I don't know how much longer I can. I can feel myself losing my sanity. I haven't had a full night's sleep since the moor. I can't eat a full meal without vomiting. And I keep having delusions. I see the boy in my house sprawled out on the couch, dead. On the floor, dead, it varies. Same with the mother, it's the car. Here, I don't know if there's more of them. But I pray for anyone who encounters him, please stay safe. I have a feeling it's too late for me as of now. P.S. I wasn't going to this, but I feel it's my obligation to warn everyone before they turn and to pray as well. Recently, whenever I wake up, there's strange, most of the time completely illegible markings on paper. I wake up pen ink all over my hands, and it's written in pen every time. I think, no, I'm sure I'm doing this in my sleep. It's part of my delusions. There's only 3 that have ever made any sense to me. The rest are just scribbles. I've seen similar side effects from the mythical creature Slenderman. If anyone can inform me about what this shit is about, please email me. I can't take this anymore. I've included photos of the 3 papers and my best interpretation of all of them. Please help me. Closing parenthesis. The first legible message I received or wrote, it says the wings know no mercy. I think it's pretty obvious the carrier is a dangerous creature who shows no sign of hospitality. There's tears and holes in the paper. I haven't a clue why those are there. The second one, the message states it is time to ascend with wings dripping blood. Around the text, I'm guessing it's a message to me saying time to die maybe. I don't know. It shows a boy tie to a tree, which is a flashback to the murders I witnessed. He's trying to fear me. Still, the paper's sides are ripped in various places as well. Also, on the bottom left corner, it says Oton Levy. I have a feeling I can interpret it, but I'm too afraid to at risk of my well-being. The image here was the last legible marking I got. It's a head and wings with a sinister grin, that of which I saw during the murders. The eyes are cut out of the paper. The text reads fear. The sky, it soars into the sky with its victims. That's all I can really think of. Everything else I don't understand.